men's tournament brings in more money, but when it comes to the U.S., I'd make the argument that the women's team is far more responsible for the boost in popularity and size.
All right, I would make the exact opposite argument. I know everyone's going to hate me.
Go ahead, Don.
But the men's team makes more money. If they make more money, then they should get more money.
Why does the men's team?
The men's team makes more money because because people are more interested in it.
But guess who?
So the women's U.S. soccer team is back in the news. They have made so much money for not even playing soccer. Now, Don Lemon is calling out the fact that they are literally taking millions of dollars from the men's team for doing nothing. Let me explain what's going on. This story starts in 2019 when the U.S. women's soccer team sued the U.S. Soccer Federation for gender discrimination. Now, a federal judge dismissed the women's claims of gender discrimination. Now, this was all based on the fact that the women were actually paid more during the time frame they were suing about. So, for instance, in the court documents, it showed that the women's team was paid $24 million, while the men's team was paid $18 million. And even on a per-game basis, the women's team were being paid more than the men's team. The court noted it in its opinion. So the U.S. federal court dismissed their claims of discrimination based on sex because the women were just getting paid more money. The court even called them out for trying to renege on the deal.
Why do you suppose the judge sided against, I guess so he's not siding with, but went against the women here?
Well, two things stood out to me, and this is the compensation piece, which he completely denied. And said that the reasons for that were, one, the women actually in this relevant period, which they're looking at, which is essentially the last 5 years. He said, one, the women made more on a gross standpoint and on a per game basis. And two, he said that their pay structure is very different. And this has always been something that's hard to explain because when we came in as players on the women's side, this goes back to my days of playing, we wanted a more guaranteed type of contract. We wanted the security of injury protection because we didn't have big, large contracts with our professional clubs like the men do and did. And so we needed that security. And so we had injury protection, maternity protection, severance pay. And so there were a lot of other assurances we had in there. And it's a very different setup for the women. The judge obviously talked a lot about this in his judgment, and in his opinion, his 32-page opinion about that. So I think it was the fact that the women over the last 5 years made more money than the men, and two, that the pay structure was very different.
So even though the U.S. women's national team was already getting paid more than the men's national team, they appealed the lawsuit because they wanted to be paid even more. And the fact that they were already getting paid more money, they say, was irrelevant. So everyone was shocked when U.S. Soccer agreed to this guaranteed equal pay structure. Remember, as a factual matter, the U.S. women's team was already being paid more money, and this deal would give them even more money than the men's team. So now that you know the facts, listen to this exchange between Don Lemon and his co-host on CNN this morning.
All right, the U.S. women's team, national team, is cashing out on the men's team's success in the 2022 World Cup. So far, they are earning more than they did actually in their last two tournaments, as you know, both of which they won.
So hold on, let me give you a little background about what's going on. If you look at this chart, you see the men's World Cup and the women's World Cup. And this is the last World Cup cycle in 2017, 2018. And this shows how much revenue and money that both World Cups brought in. So we see total prize money. The men's World Cup is $400 million, where the women's World Cup is $30 million. You see winners' prize money, $38 million for the men, $4 million for the women. You see the revenue FIFA generated. For the men's team, it's $5.36 billion. For the women's team, it's $131 million. You see ticket sales, which the men is about 3-1, and you see global audience. Now, this revenue number is really, really problematic for the women's argument because the women are making essentially 2.5% of what the men are making. So if we just see this in plain English, if for every $100 the men make, the women are making about $2.50. But the women want 50-50. Even though they're only making $2.50 for every $100 the men are making, they want an even split. So is this fair? Only making 2.5% of the revenue, but wanting 50% of the profits doesn't seem fair. And that's what this deal that was signed between the women's soccer team, the men's soccer team, and U.S. Soccer essentially does. See, In 2015, the women won the World Cup in Canada and got $2 million. In 2019, they won the World Cup in France and got $4 million. So together, that was $6 million for winning both those tournaments. Wonderful. But now the men's team, for just qualifying and making it to the knockout stage where they lost in the 2022 World Cup, they made $13 million. But because of the new collective bargaining agreement, they're forcing the men's team to give up 50% of the money they made to the women's team, which means the men's team is only making $6.5 million and the women's team is making $6.5 million. So for the women's team, in their last 2 World Cup victories, they only made $6 million. But now, without playing a single game, they've made $6.5 million from the men's team's handout, more than they've made in the past 10 years. So the men's team, who make 97.5% of the revenue, and the women's team, who only makes 2.5% of the revenue, the men have to share it 50-50. And they call this equal pay. And this is where Don Lemon has the problem. If the women are only making 2.5% of the revenue, why are they getting 50% of the profits?
Because something makes more money doesn't necessarily mean it's necessarily better, right? So if we look historically speaking, the Women's World Cup titles, they have won 4 since 1991. The Men's World Cup titles, they've won 0 since 1930. So yes, the men's tournament brings in more money, but when it comes to the U.S., I'd make the argument that the women's team is far more responsible for the boost in popularity and
All right, I would make the exact opposite argument. I know everyone's going to hate me.
Go ahead, Don.
But the men's team makes more money. If they make more money, then they should get more money.
Why does
the
men's team?
The men's team makes more money because
You know why?
because people are more interested in
But
the men.
guess who takes part of blame? I have a big issue with this, guys. WNBA, same thing's happening to them.
There's
until
also more
media,
interest in the
hold
NBA,
on. Until big media companies, big tech companies, advertisers invest and put them on their airwaves more and allow people. And allow people to see it more and gain more fans. Then you will push toward more equality.
See, the problem with this argument is that it's always someone else's fault. It's not the fact that, hey, the sport is just not entertaining. It's just not as good as the men's product. And it's interesting because we have examples of when the women's product becomes better than the men's product and makes more money. Let's talk about the UFC. All the top stars for years were men until this phenomenal female fighter came on the scene. What's her name? Ronda Rousey. And she became the UFC's highest paid fighter. She became the UFC's highest paid fighter. And why? Why did Ronda Rousey become the highest paid women's fighter in a totally dominated men's sport? It's because her fights were entertaining and more people wanted to see them. It had nothing to do with her gender. It had nothing to do with anything else except she was an entertaining champion. Her fights were explosive and more people wanted to see her. So she got paid more than the men. Was it sexism that the men were getting paid less than she was? Of course not. So this nonsense about these advertisers don't want to pay to see women succeed in generally men-dominated sports is nonsense. And Ronda Rousey has proven it to be nonsense.
But if they are blocked in so many ways and not invested in as much,
guys are,
they
I'm
don't
not
even
sexist.
have a. I know you're not, but they don't even have a shot.
I grew up the only boy in a family of all women. I understand what you're saying, but not everybody, honestly, has the same skill. Not everybody has the same interest in the sport. I think the women should be paid more. I do. But if the men...
You're right that not everyone has the same skills because the women are better skilled.
Well, the women are better skilled against other women. But if the women played the men, they wouldn't be winning the way that they win.
Okay.
Now, I like this part in the video where the two women try to say that the women are better skilled than the men. And then Poppy says, mic drop, like this was some type of ultimate point. But, Don Lemon hit some of the reality check. If they were playing against the men, they wouldn't be anywhere near the top. Matter of fact, the U.S. women's team, the championship team, lost to a team of 15-year-old boys. So to pretend that they are as equal to the men on the soccer field is nonsense. Matter of fact, Most professional women would tell you that's nonsense. If you don't think being fair about this, here's Serena Williams letting you know there's a huge difference between women playing a sport and men playing a sport. Essentially, she's going to tell you it's like playing two different games. Cue the clip.
Well, who would it be?
Well, I don't know. Let's say you would be the.
I was hoping you'd say.
All right, feminine side. And me.
Even you. Oh. Well, actually, it's funny because Andy Murray, he was been joking about myself and him playing a match, and I'm like, Andy, seriously, like, are you kidding me? Because for me, tennis and men's tennis and women's tennis are completely almost two separate sports. So I'm like, if I were to play Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0, in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, because it's true. It's true. It's a completely different sport. The men are a lot faster, and they serve harder, they hit harder. It's just a different game, and I love to play women's tennis, and I only want to play girls because I don't want to be embarrassed. I would not do the tour. I wouldn't do Billie Jean any justice. So Andy, stop it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let you kill me.
Now, the most interesting thing about that clip is that Serena Williams is generally getting paid more than the men. She's one of the top stars in tennis, and she is getting paid more, not because she's better than the men at playing tennis. It's because more people want to see her play because she's more entertaining. She's more dominant. She's like Ronda Rousey. So it's not about how good the men or the women are when it comes to getting paid. It's about who wants to watch. And people want to watch Serena Williams rather than Andy Murray. People want to watch Ronda Rousey rather than some regular guy in UFC. And people want to watch men's soccer more than women's soccer. But that's the reality, and it's easier to scream discrimination than face the fact that women's soccer as a product is an inferior product to men's soccer. But when it comes to UFC, that's not the case, right? The product in UFC of Ronda Rousey was a better product than the men's product. That's why she was the highest paid. And women's tennis with Serena Williams was a better product than the men's product, even though she couldn't beat any of the men. But she's going to get paid more because people want to watch.
Okay, I'm not going to get into. I'm not even going to get into that argument.
I'm just saying, if the sport makes more money, that means there's more money available.
Why does it make more money?
Because people are more interested in
because
it.
they see it.
When I go to a sports bar, guys, am I wrong? You guys don't want to say anything.
True.
When I go to a sports bar, if there is a women's basketball game on, I'm just being honest.
Which is on air less.
People will say,
literally
can you flip it to the guys? I don't want to watch this. I'm just telling you. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just speaking. What?
Harry, what were you going to say?
And so you cannot make people become interested in something that they are not interested in.
But you have to show it to them. Go ahead.
The only thing I would say is you can't make people interested in things that they aren't. But look at the young women who are participating in high school soccer. Those
they should get paid more money.
Tremendously.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't get paid more money.
But I would just say in terms of fan base, here in the United States, the women's fan base has been climbing ever so higher, at least if you look at the participation numbers.
You're making my point.
Soccer.
So I'm saying they should get paid more money. But if there's more interest in the men's and more money is coming in the men's sports, those men are entitled to that more money.
But I don't think you're looking at the root of the issue, which is why are people more interested in the men's sports? Because it's been historically...
it's more interesting to watch.
You guys, hold on. Come back.
I'm kidding. That was a joke. I didn't mean that.
Hold on.
But Dawn Lemon just hit him with a truth bomb. And that truth bomb is that more people enjoy watching men's soccer, and men's soccer is just more exciting. That's why you can name men's soccer players, right? Lionel Messi, Ronaldo. I say name a top female soccer player in the world, and most people can't name one. Now, one thing I like about the rebuttal for the pro-U.S. soccer sibs on CNN is that they're going to say, well, I saw a game and it was so exciting, but one game doesn't make soccer gold. You have to have fans who want to watch games constantly. So, yes, the U.S. women's soccer team may have had one great game, but that's it. When the men's team has game after game after game after game that people want to watch, billions of people, and people vote with their pocketbook. Case in point, Ronda Rousey and Serena Williams.
I did not.
I will tell you, I find nothing more boring than watching these men's U.S. games. The women, if you watch the women, that's so exciting. You go back to 1999. I remember I was coming back on the Jersey Turnpike when the women won that 1999 World Cup tournament. That was so exciting. The fact of the matter is, just because something makes more money, it doesn't necessarily make it a better
is
product.
exciting.
The
And
women's
Thank you,
product
Mary.
is significantly better than the
It
United
is
States than the
exciting.
men's
I'm
product.
not saying
It's
that
just
it's
a fact.
not more interesting to watch. That
We're gonna
was
have to
just a
leave it there.
joke. But there's more interest in the men simply because it is what it is.
Wait.
I mean, I don't.
Do you want to finish your point, or you want to move
No,
on?
she's trying to
I'm talking
move on.
Caitlin.
I actually would like to move on because
Let's
I
move
think
on.
we have a lot of news to get
Let's
to.
get to the
this
news.
morning.
This is a very
Thank you for
important
that.
conversation, I think. It's, you know.
So just to be clear, the women's team, who are already getting more money overall on a per-game basis, got called out by the court for saying they were being paid unfairly when they were already making more money to a deal they agreed to. Their case was dismissed. And now the men, who earned the majority, 97% of the revenue, they have to now split it equally with the women's team, who only are earning 2.5% of what the men are making. And this, they want you to believe, is equal pay. And the men being forced to give half their money to the women's team is equal pay. So who do you think had the better argument in this one? Do you think the women's team should get 50% of the men's revenue because they are women? Or do you think it's unfair that the men have to give up half their money to a women's team who earn substantially less than the men? Tell me how you came out in the comment section, and I will see you next time. Peace.